Okay, we are recording.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Welcome, everyone. This is our high school parent information session for reentry. So I'd like to introduce the people on our panel today. I'm Christine Tona, Interim Superintendent. We have with us Deputy Superintendent Sam Schneider, Executive Director for Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Personnel, Dr. Lori Kerner. We have high school principal, Mr. Sean O'Hara. High School Assistant Principal, Kellyanne Parlato. High School Assistant Principal, Nicole Taylor. Dr. Maria Casamassa, our ELA Director. Jason Rockcamp, our Fine Arts Director. Moderating today is our ENL and World Languages Director, Denise Stevenson. We have our Director of Facilities, Ryan Jacobellis. And Director of Security, Mr. Terry Culhane. So thanks to all of our panelists, and thank you to all of you. We have quite a few participants. That's great. Please know that we are recording this session as well, and it will be posted on the website later today, so that if you know people that couldn't tune in for the session today, that they'll be able to access the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, we'll be responding to any questions that you have, but we do encourage you to listen to the presentation first. I'm going to give a general presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Hara and the high school team to provide some other additional details. And so some of your questions may be answered. So if you could wait to enter your questions until towards the end of the presentation. Mr. O'Hara, before we start, did you want to make some opening remarks?
I just want to welcome everyone. Ms. Tona, thank you for the opportunity to have our team here from the high school, as well as some of our district directors to help us answer some questions I know that parents and our families have at this point. After your presentation, I'll give a brief overview of what the day looks like at Riverhead High School, if you don't mind, before we get to questions and answers.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. So I'm going to share my screen and start the slideshow. So at the end of the presentation, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A button that's at the bottom of the screen if you're on a desktop or a laptop or a cell phone. For an iPad, that's located at the top of the screen, and we will read the questions aloud and answer. So as this is the high school presentation, I'm going to share general information about secondary, which is grades 7 through 12. So families had very difficult decisions to make on the past couple of weeks, and we appreciate those that responded to the survey questions, because those answers help us plan. If the survey is now closed, if you didn't get an opportunity to respond to the survey, please contact the building directly, and the staff at the high school will walk you through and collect the responses from you. It's important that we have information from everyone. So families had to choose between two models for students. Obviously, there is no substitute for full-time, in-person, 5-day-a-week instruction. We know that we certainly hope and we believe that this situation is temporary, and that at some point, hopefully this school year, the powers that be in the government will decide that we can return to school full-time, so that our students can have the full rich experience of a 5-day-a-week in-person education as they deserve. So because of the numbers of students that we have in our building, the number of teachers we have, and the number of spaces that we have, it was impossible to bring all of our students in full-time and maintain social distancing. Based on the fact that many of our classes in the high school have 28, 30, even 32 students in a class, our classrooms can only accommodate 12 to 14 students under social distancing. We were not able to have 2 cohorts. We needed to make 3 cohorts. So those that are coming in person, those students will come in 2 days in person out of a 6-day cycle. And the other 4 days, they'll be home remote learning. We're offering a full day program at the high school, 8 periods a day as usual. Students will get a regular schedule that when they're in person, they'll be changing classes between periods. Lunch will happen in the cafeteria or other large spaces. Juniors and seniors will be able to leave the campus with parent guardian permission as they have in the past. Please know that when the students return to campus and enter the building, the protocols that we'll outline in a little while about entry will happen again for them. What we're having our teachers do is they're going to record a portion of their classes while they have the students in front of them. It'll be a recording of something on their screen, their smartboard screen, along with the teacher's voiceover. So the other students that are in the classroom will not be seen on the video, and the teachers will record a portion of their lesson. It may not be the whole 45-minute period. It may be 15, 20 minutes. It could be the do now, and they turn off the recording and then turn back the recording to explain the lesson for the day, give the material, the information. And those recordings will be posted on the teacher's Google Classroom page at some point during the school day. It could be at the end of the day. If that teacher teaches that class 8th period, they won't be able to make that recording until 8th period and then post it at the end of the school day. So there will be some leeway for students to access, they'll be able to access those lessons at any time, but it's possible they may not be able to access all the classes in the same day. Maybe they log on the next day to get that class. Depends on what their own personal schedule is and what the schedule is in your household. So that's why we were looking to do recordings, because it provides that flexibility, because we know everyone's situation at home is different. So on remote learning days, the students then will log in and see the continuation of the teacher's lesson. So it's live on the days that they're in school, and then the recorded lesson is on the days that they're home. And the purpose of that is, with 3 cohorts, if we have to be in this predicament for a whole school year, it's only 60 days. And we know that students need 180 days of curriculum, and this will allow us to move that curriculum forward and provide the instruction that the students need. If a family chooses the full virtual, full remote option, the students will also be on those teachers' rosters. So at some point, if we go back to normalcy and everyone's in person, the same schedule will be followed. So the students will be able to log into Google Classroom from home and access the material from the teachers on a daily basis. We know that some of the decision-making that families have had to take part in the past week or so, they're difficult decisions. So as a district, we're allowing families to choose to switch back into the other option, should they wish. So if you start with hybrid and you'd like to go to full remote, please let the high school administration know. And the same thing, if you're starting with full remote and you'd like to go into hybrid, let the high school administration know. We just ask to give at least 5 school days for the switch to happen. There's a lot of considerations that need to be done, busing, and as well as letting the teachers know the flexibility of the students coming back and forth. So we'll do it as quickly as we can, but it's possible it could take up to 5 or 7 school days to do so. So we know last spring was very difficult with grading, and we moved away from our traditional report cards. So for the 2020-21 school year, we're moving back to our traditional report cards. Everyone feels that that's very important. So students will receive progress reports as well as report cards on a quarterly basis. And we also have to take attendance. So when students are in person, that's very easy. The teachers will be able to mark students present if they're in their classrooms. But for the students on remote days during the hybrid model or full remote, they will need to log into Google Classroom on a daily basis. So there's 2 pieces to this. If they log in each day for each class, they will get credit for attending that day. But that's not equivalent to doing the work. So the work itself is the effort, and that will be reflected on the report card grade. So it's important to log into each class on a daily basis. As we said earlier, we don't expect students to follow the same exact time to log in as if they were in person. It will be available to them in the evening as well to log in and access their classes. So cohorts. I'll mention a little bit about elementary as well. In K-6, we have 2 cohorts for in-person. Siblings will be placed in the same cohort unless families request otherwise. And then in grades 7 through 12, it's the rotation. So let's say one week a student is in the cohort that comes to school on Monday, Tuesday. The next week, if there's no days off, the student will be in school on Tuesday, Wednesday. The week after that, they'll be in school on Wednesday, Thursday. If a holiday falls in there, it will push the day another day further. But students in grades 7 through 12 will be placed in the same cohort if they're siblings or reside in the same household, unless otherwise requested. And those cohorts will be determined alphabetically with some exceptions to help us balance classes. And the general rule is A through F, last name will be one cohort, G through N, a second cohort, O through Z, a third cohort. And specific information will be sent home by the end of next week in the mail, in the summer mailing. So you may not receive that until a day or two before school starts, but everyone's been working so hard to try to get the most accurate information together. So we thank all of you that responded to that survey because that's very helpful to us. If you have a family situation where you have an elementary student and let's say a middle school student and a high school student or 2 high school students, you may want to put your secondary students on 2 different cohorts. So that may help with any childcare issues that you have with your elementary student. So that's something to consider. And if that's a situation that you'd like to explore, please contact the building principals and they'll work with you on that. Mask protocols. We do expect all students and staff to wear masks pretty much all day. This is a big change from what students and families have had to do when they were home for the past 6 months. So face coverings or masks need to be worn when students are on the bus, when they enter the building, hallways, use the bathrooms, as well as when they're in classrooms. There will be mask breaks allowed, 3-minute mask breaks every period. The last 3 minutes of each instructional period, the students will be given a mask break as long as the students remain 6 feet apart. With the 3 cohorts, we're able to keep class sizes small, which is a silver lining that students will probably get more individual attention when they're in the classroom than they would typically with 3 times as many students in the classroom. We need to keep it that way in order to be able to properly social distance and keep the desks 12 to 14 students max in a classroom. So if a student arrives at school or arrives to the bus and they don't have a mask, we will have masks on the bus as well as at the school to provide. We do recommend that families provide their students with a couple of extra masks every day in case it gets lost, dropped on the floor, soiled. Students will also be able to, when they're in the cafeteria, once they're sitting at the table to eat their lunch, they'll be able to obviously take their mask off, but they will be sitting 6 feet apart from anyone else when they're in the cafeteria. If they're purchasing lunch or picking up lunch, they will have to have their mask on when they're online to get their lunch. Safety and health and safety is our top priority during these difficult times. And we know that the mask protocols may be a challenge for some, but it's deliberate. We've had many conversations. We thank all the people that have participated in our district task force and the subcommittees for the rich conversation. It involved staff members, teachers, administrators, parents, and these are difficult decisions that needed to be made. So the ones that we arrived at are what we feel are the best courses of action to take at this time. So regarding health and safety, if your child has any symptoms of COVID-19 and or fever over 100 degrees, please keep your child home from school. And then it's recommended that you consult with your medical provider to determine if any further COVID-19 testing is needed. If a student becomes ill during the school day, that student will be sent home. You will be contacted and advised to bring the child to see a health provider. The student will not be permitted back to school without a letter from a health provider stating that they are not infected with COVID-19 and that they are safe to return to school. For students who exhibit symptoms during the school day, each of the buildings will have an isolation room where students will remain until a parent or guardian or emergency contact comes to pick the student up. If a student or a staff member does test positive for COVID-19, the testing lab will automatically notify the Department of Health. We may not get that information directly or in a timely fashion, so we are asking families to please notify us as soon as you know if your child tested positive. The district will work with the Suffolk County Department of Health to conduct any contact tracing that's necessary and follow all of the recommendations of the Department of Health in decisions that we need to make. So we are equipped to temperature check every student as they arrive to school. The custodial staff is working very hard all summer, and they will continue to do so throughout the school year to provide frequent cleaning of high-touch surfaces during the school day. And they will do heavy disinfection in after school and evenings to prepare the classrooms for the next day. We have purchased barriers for small group instruction and individual situations for testing and counseling. So our guidance counselor areas, psychologists, social workers, they will have those barriers in their offices so that they can communicate with students in a closer proximity. Masks will still be worn, but those barriers will provide additional safety. I mentioned before, the classrooms, all the desks will be facing in the same direction. They'll be 6 feet apart. We've also purchased paper, they look like paper placemats, and they're disposable. And as a student enters a classroom, they'll pick one of those up and put that on the desk, so to limit the surface that they are also touching. And we will have hand sanitizer stations throughout the buildings as well. So if you want to send your child in with hand sanitizer, that's fine, but please know by state law, they cannot bring the hand sanitizer on the school bus because there are flammable ingredients in the hand sanitizer and they're not allowed to be on school buses. But if you'd like to drop some off for your child or drop your child off with hand sanitizer, we can make those accommodations. So here's some pictures from the high school of what the hallways will look like. Our custodial staff has begun working to make the markings on the hallway as the hallways are cleaned and furniture is moved. So these hallways will be marked to control traffic flow and promote social distancing. And here's some more pictures as well. And there are indicators that show where 6 feet apart will be, and there'll be signage throughout all of the buildings reminding students to stay 6 feet apart and wear a mask. So computer devices. In the spring, we loaned many devices to our families in need. We will continue to do so. Those families probably still have those devices. We will continue to loan and provide to other families who need devices for their children. Chromebooks in grades 3 through 12 and iPads in grades K through 2. We have purchased additional devices, and another silver lining here is we're getting very close to being a district with a one-to-one device initiative, which means that students will be able to, most likely in the 21-22 school year, every student will have a device where they would bring that device back and forth between home and school. And hopefully at that point, we're on full in-person 5-day-a-week normal instruction. And the technology, the teachers have learned so much about technology, and they're learning to use it as an enhancement for their instruction, that it will be beneficial for the students to be able to have that technology with them at home and at school each day. So at this point, if you want to start entering your questions, but keep in mind that Mr. O'Hara and Ms. Parlato and Ms. Taylor are going to also share information that may answer some of your questions before we even read them. So I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Ms. Tona. So once again, good afternoon, everybody. And for those who are going to tune in or are tuning in for the recorded version at some point, welcome to you as well. We are looking forward to seeing everybody in person in September, of course, by cohort, but it's going to be good to see everyone again. So I just want to give a very basic, broad overview of what entering the building, exiting the building, moving around the hallways, and you know, entering a classroom might look like before we get to the questions and answers. And I see the questions are starting to build up, so I'll be brief. So basically, we are using two entrances at Riverhead High School, and we feel confident that we're able to manage and still comply with social distancing guidelines. So the front entrance will be utilized for parent drop-offs and for our walkers, and the rear entrance is exclusively for bus drop-offs. So when a student enters the building, as you heard Ms. Tona say, their temperatures will be taken, and Mr. Culhane and Mr. Jacobellis have worked very hard on designing patterns in the hallway so that students are quickly able to have their temperature taken, so it doesn't take up too much time in the morning getting them in the building, especially if it's going to be cold out when we get to the winter months. So once we get our temperature taken and we pass that screening part of the entry, there are several locations that we are going to be using for students to be before they go to their first period class. Many of our students get here very, very early, depending on their bus route, depending on parent schedules or walking schedules. So between our cafeteria, our auditorium, and our gymnasium, we will be monitoring the amount of students that are in each of those spaces. Breakfast will be available for those who plan to have breakfast with us here. And once we start moving on to first period, as you saw in the pictures that Ms. Tona showed, the hallways are going to be clearly marked. There is enough room for them to be bi-directional with ample space in between and 2 lanes on each side of the hallway. So if you think of driving, I think that we're going to leave here as much better drivers because everybody's going to learn to keep to the right. And there will be plenty of room for social distancing as we make our way through the hallways. Hand sanitizing stations will be strategically placed throughout the building. And once a student enters the classroom, as Ms. Tona mentioned before, there will be disposable desktops for students to utilize, and Mr. Ryan Jacobellis will expand upon later. I see some questions about wiping down surfaces. He'll go into more detail with that. For lunch, we are utilizing our cafeteria, and we are utilizing some additional spaces as well. We are able to still operate an open campus for our juniors and seniors by credit with parent approval to leave the building for lunch and return. However, when they do return, as Ms. Stone said, they will be rescreened. With the way the cohorts are designed, I'm fairly confident that we can use the cafeteria. We can utilize courtyard space that we haven't really utilized for lunch before in nice weather. And we can also use the auditorium. So, you know, if a student has finished their lunch, they might choose to just relax in the auditorium for the remainder of the lunch period, but it would still be a full lunch period. Lockers. I want to just mention that we are not using lockers in the halls, and we are also not utilizing our gym lockers. So students, of course, will be allowed to carry their backpacks with their belongings for the day, for any items that they may need. And with that in mind, we can go ahead and open it up to some questions, and we'll provide some answers.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. So Ms. Stevenson will be our moderator. She'll be asking questions, and the panel will be jumping in to provide the answers.
Okay, thank you so much. So there is a question looking for some clarification on the teachers submitting a video by the end of the day. What should the students be working on all day? Will they have to wait until the end of the day to be taught?
So the way it's going to work is that when they're in for 2 days, they'll get some direction. There'll be direct instruction on the 2 days of in-person. Now, for the students who are on full remote or the other 4 days of remote, some lessons will be up first thing in the morning, depends on when the teacher is able to post the recording and what periods they teach their lessons. But basically there will be that allowance that if the teacher is not putting up a lesson until later in the afternoon, obviously the student will have until the next day to complete the activity, unless there's a longer deadline than that. So there will be flexibility with that. It's just important that the student log into Google Classroom each day. We're working out a system for what the teacher will ask of the student to just check in to give them the attendance credit for the day. And like we mentioned earlier, the effort and the work completed will be what's measured for the report card grade. So there will be flexibility. We know that every family situation is different, and it's not going to be that some teachers will have the work up earlier than others. It's an 8-period day, so it depends on the cycle. So anyone want to add to that?
Okay.
Ms. Tona, I just, you hit the nail on the head. There will be some flexibility. I don't think anybody can expect an assignment to be posted at 2 p.m. and understanding that some of our students do work in the late afternoon. It's probably not going to be due the next day. So once we actually get running and into a routine, assignments given in person, those are assignments you could be working on while you're waiting for your next assignment or your next message from your teacher to arrive.
If a student is going full virtual, how will they be told what their class schedule is, since they would usually get their class schedule in homeroom on the first day?
Excellent question. So hopefully everybody is all set to use our student and parent portal. And Mr. Gassar, if you don't mind, when will students be able to see their schedules on the portal? Will that be open on day one?
Yes, that'll be open the first day of school for all students, even those part of the cohort that will not be starting on the first day.
And I will be sure to send a school messenger call or robocall to remind everyone to check for their schedules on the portal.
Any updates for sports?
Unfortunately, we are operating under a contingent budget, and so all athletics are not going to happen this school year. All clubs and activities, with the exception of senior class advisor, junior class advisor, student council, National Honor Society, and yearbook. Those are the only clubs that will run this year, and everything else, unfortunately, due to contingent budget, we cannot run those. We're very sorry about that, but we have no choice.
How will they control COVID on the bus with kids taking masks off?
Students are required to wear masks on the bus. We're asking families to enforce that and reinforce that over and over, remind their students that this is for their health and safety and the health and safety of others around them. Students do not follow the rules for wearing masks. The building administration will intervene. There'll be conversations first, maybe some phone calls home, and then consequences will have to be put in play. It's going to be a school rule for this school year for as long as we have to follow the orders for socially distance, and we are keeping masks on. And if anyone else wants to jump in on that one, feel free.
I just want to jump in on the masks, Ms. Tona, if you don't mind. You had mentioned, let's get students used to wearing the masks all day since they're probably not wearing them at home. I also want to mention that the mask needs to cover the nose and the mouth and fit tightly under the chin, or, not tightly, but you know what I mean, fitted to the chin. So, please practice wearing the masks properly as well.
I will also add that our drivers are going to have disposable masks available for students who come to the bus without their mask. They are going to require the students to wear masks on the bus. Our buses are going to be limited to 21 or 22 kids on a bus, unless it's a bus run where we can have members of the same household sitting together, in which case we'll have slightly greater number of kids on the bus, but masks are definitely going to be mandatory on the bus.
If a student is 100% virtual, how will resource and services for IEP be handled?
So the special education department is going to be communicating with the families that are 100% virtual to provide the accommodations that are on the IEP as best as we can. We are looking to provide small group instruction via Google Meet for the students that need that small group instruction for resource rooms, speech services, OT, PT, counseling. So we are looking to have a forum hopefully next week for our special education families with Mrs. Mazzafarro and Mrs. McKee, who are director and assistant director of PPS and special education.
If a student is signed up for an elective class, are we finding out before school starts if they're still in that class? And if not in that class anymore, what will then fill that time slot?
Mr. Casar, you want to touch on that?
Sure. Students receive their entire schedules the first day of school, the first day of their classes in homeroom. For students that are not attending the first day, they are available on the portal. If there is something that is incorrect on the schedule, the students will contact the guidance counselors and they will address it. In the meantime, they follow the schedule they have until the correction is made.
And I just want to add, glancing at a lot of the questions are asking about electives and which electives were cut. Based on the decisions that were made by the Board of Education last week, none of the electives have been cut. So am I correct in saying that for the most part, requests that students made are being filled? And if they're not being filled, it's because of the constraints of their schedule, that they can't fit a particular elective because it's only offered at one particular time. Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct.
Are backpacks allowed since there are no lockers?
Yes, backpacks are allowed.
Is core base still allowed to happen? And if so, how is cleaning going to be completed?
I didn't see Mr. Sachs is not on this, but I don't believe that core base will be utilizing that area of the gym. The phys ed program is being designed and adjusted for low impact physical activity, and the weight room will not be utilized.
My son just switched from resource room to inclusion. How will he get his extra support virtually? Will there still be an inclusion teacher in the classroom on the 2 days that he is there?
Yes, the teachers will be following a regular 8-period-a-day schedule. The inclusion classes that have a content area and a special education teacher will both be there. And then we'll be working out ways to provide the support to students who need it on their IEP.
What about lab requirements for science classes, and what extra help will be available?
So with the in-person learning, the hybrid scenario, we are running A days and B days, and that's to accommodate our lab periods and any of the alternating day classes that we have. With regard to full remote, we do need to clarify, but I believe there are some lab activities that can be completed to meet the requirements.
Yes, SED has lifted the requirement of all hands-on labs. As long as they have the minutes, they can do written labs. So the teachers have, they'll be working on providing that information for the students so that they can get full credit for the Regents classes that involve a lab.
And then the second part of that question was, what extra help will be available?
At this point, there are no after-school buses. So that's going to be an issue with extra help. And in the past, extra help was at the direction of the teacher. So, but it's going to be a challenge without having extra help buses. We are looking at ways that we can utilize our Title I funds to help support some extra help activities as well.
Why not have synchronous virtual classes on the at-home days?
So this is a conversation that all of the people on the committees had many times, and There's a couple of reasons. One is that not all the students are available to log in with a computer at the same time of the day. So there are different family constraints that happen that would make it difficult for live synchronous instruction on the student's part. And we also have concerns about the social emotional health of our students. And there have been instances that we've read about in the news that students were on live synchronous instruction. And unfortunately, tragic events or circumstances occurred in the student's home while they were home on virtual instruction. And the other students that were on that same call, unfortunately, had to experience that. And those are sad realities that we wish to avoid. So we felt that the best way to do this is to have the teachers do a portion of their lesson each day and record it and provide that information to the students on a daily basis. So that's where we're at right now. And, you know, we understand the concerns.
If a student doesn't have a scheduled lunch period, will they be permitted to eat during mask breaks in class?
So if a student doesn't have a lunch period, traditionally what we have done is they go to see their administrator and they work out a class where it is feasible for them to have lunch. However, under these circumstances, we will have to provide that same lunch pass, but the meal will have to be consumed in the cafeteria.
Will the slides be available on the website as well as the recording?
The lesson slides, yes, the lessons and the recording will, the slides will be part of the recording.
So for I think this presentation, I mean.
This presentation, the slides are embedded in the recording.
If things should change in a couple or a few months for the positive and schools can get back to normal, is Riverhead prepared to do the change, or is the plan to keep it this way for the entire school year?
As soon as we can get the go-ahead to bring the students back full-time, 5 days a week, we're ready. And the reason why we're ready is because the schedules at the high school are ready for all students to return. So as soon as we're able to do that, I would imagine we would need a few days to make that happen, but that's what we want more than anything else.
Will the custodians be using foggers to disinfect the schools, and will you be closing on certain days to do deep cleaning?
We will not be using foggers. The CDC and the Department of Health have continually reported that the most effective way of sanitizing is by wiping the surfaces down. We don't feel there's a need to close on certain days for deep cleaning. With the limited number of desks and items in the classrooms, the limited number of students attending, we should be able to do a good job sanitizing on a daily basis.
Will they be taking temperatures on buses?
No, the temperature taking will happen when the students exit the bus. The problem that we discussed was if a student arrives at the bus stop, once they're at the bus stop, we're legally responsible for the student. And if we take a temperature, then the bus would have to contact the parent, wherever the parent may be, and wait with the student. We can't leave the student alone. So we felt it was safest, everyone will have masks on in the bus. All students will get on the bus and get to school. And then if a temperature is detected when they arrive, then the student will be isolated. The administration will contact the parent, or the nurse will contact the parent or guardian or contact to pick up the student.
If my child does not already have a Chromebook, how can I get one?
Yep, if you didn't indicate on the survey, please contact the building administration and they'll take care of that for you.
How is gym going to be handled, both in person and virtual?
So for physical education, as I stated earlier, the weight room will not be utilized for core base, and the entire program is being adapted for low impact activity. Gym will take place outside as often as possible, weather permitting. Outside, students will be at 12 feet apart, and outside they will be able to remove their masks for the activity. when it is not feasible to go outside, students will be inside the gymnasiums. We have a main gym and we have a back gym, the auxiliary gym. Students will still be 12 feet apart, but will need to keep their masks on indoors.
And then another question, someone wanted to know how physical education will be conducted, but also they wanted to know how will chorus be conducted?
Mr. Rockamp, are you?
Sure. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody. Maybe I can just take a brief moment to describe and go over the procedure for music and music performance groups at the high school. With the strict guidelines in place for social distancing, we need for band and chorus 12 feet apart between each student. And with orchestra, it's 6 feet apart. So for all ensembles, everyone will be masked at all times. We will teach the students how to adapt and adjust their masks. So if they are playing an instrument that requires them to use a mouthpiece, we will teach them how to do that and the steps to be taken to fit the mouthpiece to the mask, per se. And the way to make it happen is, again, we're going to be sticking to the 6 foot and the 12 foot. The masks are going to stay on. We're going to ask that students have, or if they're in chorus or if they're in band, that they have a second additional mask that they just use for performances and rehearsals, so that they're not taking that same mask back out into the hallways. So the cohorts will be broken down also as well. So the cohorts will be split in half within the cohort so that we can have groupings of 8, 10, 12 students at a time. All the students will receive instruction. It's not as often as we like, but the primary goal right now is to make sure that students stay safe and that they still can receive the instruction that they hope to receive in music classes.
Thank you. I'm just going to mention to Ms. Stevenson, as we have 122 questions in the queue right now, and we're going to do our best to get through all of them. But I do need to leave by 1:20 for another appointment. So the last question that's in there right now will be the last question. So please, if you have other questions, feel free to contact any of the building administrators, and they'll be happy to assist you, or it's possible that your question may be answered amongst the 122 that we still have left.
Will the mask policy be seriously enforced?
So, yes, you know, everybody's required to wear a mask, students and staff. Do I anticipate that there'll be an adjustment period and constant reminders at first? Yes, I do anticipate that, but the reminders will come. You know, at some point, though, you know, it's not optional. You know, we need to wear the masks, and in an abundance of caution, and for the safety of all involved, the masks are required. So while there will be reminders at first, eventually it will follow the path of our dress code, which is where if a student's not able to comply or not complying, then parent communication is required, and a solution will need to be met, or you know, we will have to send students home.
Are the desks going to be disinfected between classes and students? And if not, can students bring their own wipes with them?
Mr. Jack Bellis?
What we're going to do is we're going to provide basically what are placemats for surfaces in the classrooms for each desk. There will be wipes available and gloves if a student wants to sanitize his or her own desk, or they can bring their own wipes in. That's fine.
How is going by alphabet helping with social distancing when schedules are created by classes and not by last name?
That's a very good question. So the first thing that we did was we looked at what might be a good breakdown in the alphabet. And then we did some initial runs of what our classes are enrolled at right now. And that's how we came up with where the breakdowns are. In addition, making sure that the number of students that ended up in a class based upon the cohort breakdown we needed to move some students into some different sections of classes. So I hope that answers your question, but that's, you know, we had to start somewhere, and breaking it up into thirds was where we needed to start to comply with the amount of people that could be in the building under the social distancing guidelines. Then we looked specifically at each class roster and made adjustments from there.
And there will be some adjustments as needed for a couple of students that don't fit into the perfect alphabet breakdown. But this was a monumental task for our administrators. So thank you all, because it's hard enough to make a master schedule, let alone make a master schedule and then make this type of a change to have different cohorts.
There are quite a few questions asking about a ninth grade orientation. Some people are asking if there will be an in-person orientation for ninth grade, and others are asking if there will be a virtual orientation for ninth grade.
So there will be a virtual orientation. Where that's a monumental task as well, because we're pulling a lot of pieces together and creating, you know, a presentation out of it. I'm hoping that it's going to be available on August 27th. Some parents who have expressed, you know, real concern have spoken with me or emailed me, and if there are extenuating circumstances and we are able to do it, if the parent needs to reach out to me and request that we do a tour, then I can certainly comply for extenuating circumstances.
How long will students have to complete their work from Google Classroom? There are quite a few questions of people concerned about their students being able to complete the work on Google Classroom.
So, you know, when you think about high school assignments, I mean, the due dates are going to vary based upon the type of work that's being required. And one thing to keep in mind is that on the in-person days, the class sizes are smaller, for, you know, which will enable some extra attention or some clarification of information if needed. But in terms of how long, I don't think anything unreasonable, but it all depends upon the type of assignment that's being assigned.
My son suffers from migraines, and sometimes I have to pick him up from school. Will he still need a doctor's note to return to school?
Mr. Culhane, you want to take that?
Problem with the mouse. As far as if he's going to be going home and seeking the advice of a physician for the migraine, it doesn't hurt to get the note, but as a normal course of action, we don't require a note for someone to come back from suffering from a migraine. They were in school, and as long as it's not COVID related, you're good to go.
Will there be extra help for the kids, and can they go on days they are not in person?
So, you know, the cohorts are designed to make sure that we are in compliance with the social distancing guidelines. And the other challenge is that there will not be any after-school busing. But as Ms. Tona alluded to before, there may be opportunities to provide an extra help similar to what we were able to offer last year during the remote learning period. I don't know if you want to expand upon that, Ms. Tona, or not.
Yeah, we're working on that. We get annual funds in Title I, so we're looking to see how we can use those funds to support the students that are in need outside of the school day. But it would most likely be a virtual option, but we don't have any details for that yet.
It says that only a portion of lessons will be recorded for home learning. What is keeping the teachers from recording the entire lesson during their in-person class for that day so that at-home students can sit virtually on that class?
So teachers will, during the course of a lesson, there's a do now, possibly, there's some instruction, direct instruction, question and answer, and then many times there's independent work. So it will be up to the teacher to determine which is the portion of the lesson that should be recorded for the direct instruction or information that's needed for the student to complete the work at home. So, you know, during that lesson, when the students were in front of them, they're also walking around and assisting students as needed. That sort of portion of the lesson does not need to be recorded.
There are a few questions about contact tracing in case of someone having a positive result. So will the teachers provide the Suffolk County Department of Health contact tracers with a list of students in a particular class if a student does test positive for COVID? And will the students have assigned seats? Also, will guidance in office keep a log of students that have entered in case of a staff member in that office that tests positive?
When there's a positive test, what happens is if a person goes and gets tested for COVID and their test comes back positive from the lab contacts Suffolk County Department of Health, who in turn will contact us. If you go for a rapid test and it comes back positive, we would ask the families to kindly let us know immediately so that we can notify the Suffolk County Department of Health, who are going to give us the guidance and the assistance in all contact tracing. That's how we'll determine who needs to be isolated and quarantined. We'll be guided by the Department of Health's protocols and contact tracing procedures. As far as assigned seats, no. That's up to the teachers, how they manage their classrooms.
Are students
I'm sorry. Yeah, logs are kept in all of the offices that students may visit, whether it's a nurse's office, an administrator's office, or the guidance office.
Are students required to take mask breaks?
They are not, but we're providing them with an opportunity to dry off their face because they will get a little sweaty, and to just give them a break to catch some fresh air, if you will.
And following up on that question, with the kids and teachers having to wear masks during in-class instruction, will the classrooms be air conditioned?
We are not adding air conditioners specifically for that purpose.
Where do seniors that drive themselves enter?
So in a welcome packet that's going to be coming home to you, I apologize. I said in a phone call last week it would be early this week. Slight delay on that. So the mailing will be coming home a little bit later than early this week. It might be towards the end of this week. They're actually going out right now. I'm watching them. So there will be a map, and to answer the question, the back parking lot, there is a clear marking for the entrance for students who will be driving to school with a senior license.
And a little appreciation. Someone wants to thank all the teachers, administrators, and staff for all of our hard work in this difficult situation.
Thank you.
Next question. Are Regents exams and AP exams going to happen this year?
So far, yes. We haven't heard anything otherwise.
Another question about the quarantine protocols, but I'm wondering if we feel like we've answered this already. Mr. Culhane?
Again, we're going to be guided by the Department of Health's recommendations on whether or not we ask people to isolate at home or quarantine at home. And that period can vary from 10 to 14 days. And again, depending on the contact tracing, how many people were in close contact with that individual, close contact being within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. So that, depending on how much close contact that person had with how many people will determine what type of quarantine protocols and or any type of school closing that may occur.
Can they carry water to drink during mask breaks?
Absolutely they can, not a problem.
There's another question about when students will receive their schedules, and then specifically about BOCES. Are there buses for the AM BOCES student when they return from BOCES if it is not their cohort day?
Yes, there are buses. They're working out the schedule now, but there will be sufficient buses with adequate social distancing provided for those BOCES students.
Let me also add to that there are no PM occupational education programs this year. All occupational education students are going to be going in the morning only. And as Mr. Klein said, when they come back from their program at BOCES, if it's not their day to be in the high school, they will be shuttled home. But there are no PM OCED programs this year.
Will there be driver's ed?
believe we're still working out the details on whether or not we can do that safely under the current guidelines. I don't know if we heard from state ed yet.
I haven't heard anything. I know we were waiting on that. Has anyone else?
No, still waiting on guidance.
Another thank you for all of our efforts. If a student has a 100-degree fever, but tested positive for COVID, do they stay home for 14 days?
Again, yes, that's the minimum that they'll stay home. They want them to be fever-free for at least 10 days. So if that fever persists for the 14 days, they're going to stay out longer. It's not just an automatic 14, you're good to go. So after all of the conversations that we'll have with the Department of Health, will be guided by their guidance. But to answer that question specifically, yes, at a minimum 14 days, 10 days from when the fever is abated.
I think this one is actually from a student, not a parent. Do we have the choice to work at home, or do we have to go to school?
So I would ask that you have your parents email me or call me, and I will discuss that with them. But you know, they can opt for full remote at this point.
If a student is sick but doesn't present common or multiple symptoms, for example, vomiting, will they be put in the COVID room?
What'll happen is if a child is exhibiting any type of illness, they'll be sent to the nurse's office. On entry into the school, when we do the temperature checks, just as a precaution, they will be sent to an area to await assessment by the nurses. If the nurse determines that they have multiple symptoms or are suspected of having COVID, they will be sent home, and their parents and or guardian will be advised to take them to to a medical professional for further evaluation. If it's determined that it's a fever based, for example, on a toothache or an earache, they will not be sent home unless they feel that they can't continue with the day and will notify the parent. They will only go into the COVID room if the nurse's assessment, they feel that they are possibly infected with COVID, and they'll await their parents' pickup or guardians' pickup in that room.
Were the desks measured from edge to edge versus center to center?
The desks have been measured from edge to edge as per the SED and the Department of Health guidelines.
How will you hold your teachers accountable to uploading video as well as posting grades?
The teachers have been part of our discussion process. They're aware of what needs to be done. They too want nothing more than to provide the best education to their students. And we're all going to work together on making that happen, considering the circumstances that we're in right now. I'm very proud of our teachers. They've been terrific. They worked throughout the summer to help provide us guidance and input on decisions that needed to be made. And we'll continue to work together to provide the best education we can.
At lunch, will students be allowed to sit at tables with one another?
So we are currently set up to comply with social distancing guidelines. If you could picture our cafeteria, if you've been here, if you're not an incoming freshman, you know, we have tables, and at those tables, those round tables, it's 6 feet apart from one end to the other. So 2 people at each round table. If you think about our booths, the booths are 6 feet apart diagonally on each end of each side. So we can have 2 people at a booth with proper social distancing.
How will the A-Day, B-Day system work?
So the cohorts are coming 2 school days in a row. And each of those school days will have 1 A-Day and 1 B-Day.
Where can we get a copy of the cohort calendar?
We are currently working on the cohort calendar. The information that Ms. Tona has put it forth in the re-entry plan, that will get you through most of September. In the mailing that's coming home, Ms. Parlato put together a calendar that's going to get you through September. And shortly we will have a full cohort calendar, color-coded. We're going to add a color to the mix, you know, shortly.
How will clubs work if they are in different cohorts?
Unfortunately, based on the contingent budget, there are no clubs. The clubs that are going to run, the senior class, junior class advisors, yearbook, National Honor Society, and Student Council, we're looking to have those advisors work with the students remotely so that all students can participate that wish to or qualify to.
It was mentioned that cohorts can change their cohort due to siblings, etc. How will this affect the cohort group numbers and guarantee of the limited class size needed to abide by the social distance guidelines?
So the cohorts are designed, again, to ensure that we are able to comply with social distancing guidelines. If there are extenuating circumstances or if there are situations where siblings are not in the same cohort by its design, please contact me and we can discuss it. And I need to look at class lists and ensure that it can be done before making those changes. In most cases, as Ms. Tuna said earlier, we can fit 12 to 14 students in a class. Some of the classes, due to the type of class it may be, have significantly less than 12 to 14 students in the class. So there is room to move, but it's not for I want to be in my friend's cohort. So I would like to have communication with parents before making any changes.
How will students take tests if the test is given when they are remote, and how will you handle students sharing test material?
You want me to take that one? So that's going to be a challenge. So the teachers will be working with them. We have 2 days of professional development coming up before the students arrive to school, and we'll be revisiting all of these situations on a daily, if not on a weekly, if not daily basis. So it is a good question. It's definitely something that we have to work on with teachers to determine what's the best way to administer assignments for assessment that will provide us from knowing the student's individual work.
How will bathroom use be monitored? New research suggests COVID and air from flushing, so who will monitor mask wearing in restrooms?
So keep in mind we have a reduced population in the building. So we do have teacher duties that monitor who enters and exits the building, and there will need to be, based on a case-by-case basis, some monitoring on how many students are in the bathroom at a time. Paper passes are being utilized as well. So where as in the past we've had passes that students share, like a class set. Now we will be utilizing paper passes. So we will have a conversation with our teachers that are monitoring bathrooms on their duty period about monitoring the flow of people who are using the restrooms.
Just as an addition to that, the security guards typically make their rounds and they do spot checks, sporadic checks of the bathrooms to make sure that everything is going as smoothly as it's supposed to go.
Will lessons be on Zoom or Google Meets?
We'll be using Google Meet, which is accessed through Google Classroom and the Clever app, Clever login.
And along the same lines, will all teachers be using the same platform to teach? For example, Google Classroom, as opposed to some using e-boards and Google Classroom?
Yes, in grades 3 through 12, everyone's using Google Classroom.
Will there be a way to report if we hear that students or staff test positive but do not report to district in a timely and proper fashion?
Yes, we have the Share It app on the district website, and it comes up on every school's website as well. And it's completely anonymous, and we welcome any and all comments, positive as well as negative. So it's a good avenue for reporting.
How will science labs or hands-on lessons be handled from a sanitary perspective?
So as with many of our materials, some courses use, some adjustments might have to be made. As Ms. Tona alluded to before, there's some changes to state requirements for the labs, but equipment, Mr. Rockamp, I don't know if you want to jump in about art. We have to adjust what we're doing and how we're doing it.
This student's looking for an opportunity. So can juniors with a junior license be permitted to drive, to park, and to help families with transportation and reduce the number of riders on buses?
I appreciate your thoughtful question. The driving privileges are state law, so we cannot change them or make adjustments to them. The misconception each year for juniors and seniors is that you can drive to school and work, which is not the case. If you look at the guidelines for Suffolk County, they define driving to school very specifically under the purview of a junior license. So unfortunately, we cannot open up parking privileges to students who have a junior license.
With no gym lockers, are students required to change for gym as before, which I think we've already answered, but are students required to keep everything in their backpack? Are the lockers available in the music room for instruments?
Yes, for instrument storage, if the student comes in on cohort A, they'll be able to store it, but when they leave after if their 2 days of cohort are done, their instrument must leave with them. So they can't store it over the course of days, just through the cohort, and that's it.
And I think this is already answered, but what will they be doing in chorus and bands? But the follow-up, I don't know if we were completely clear on this. Will they be singing, and will they be singing in masks?
Yes, they'll be singing in the class. They will also be masked, and they will also be at the 12 feet apart.
Is the district considering applying for the 180-day waiver proactively?
Not at this time. Currently, our calendar is in compliance with the 180-day mandate. So at this point, we're okay.
Who do we contact if our portal access is not working?
You can email any one of the high school administrators, and we will get it to the right place. But the portal comes out of Ms. Taylor's office, and her assistant, Mrs. Bennett, operate the portal.
Could the schedule be opened prior to the first day?
Mr. Gassar?
We don't have any plans to open the schedule up at this point. We're still finalizing and putting tweaks in it. We've been working through with new entrants, as well as making sure that our classes are adjusted. The trick that we're dealing with this year, which is unique, is that because we are breaking down to make sure we have equitable numbers of students in the seats in each class, that's literally something that's fluid, and it's ever changing. So ordinarily, yes, we would be able to release schedules a little bit early, but this year, because of that heightened sensitivity and trying to get proper balance, that is not an option. But I would also like to add that schedules are available for all students on the first day, even if they're not coming in with that first cohort. So everyone will get their schedule at the same time.
Would they do pay to play for sports?
No, unfortunately, we're not allowed to do that. The school district can't get involved in anything like that.
Can kids be opted out of physical education if proper social distancing and mask wearing is harder to manage?
We're required to provide physical education classes to students. If a student has a medical exemption for physical education, just as in true full instruction times, please get the letter into the building administration and they will make accommodations.
How are my children placed, one senior, one elementary age, when senior is primary caretaker while parent is essential worker? Can they be placed on the same cohort days? Children have different last names, which places them in different cohorts.
The problem with that is at the secondary level, it's a rotation cohort. So there are no set days. So there will always, the students at the high school will attend school, depending on the week, any one of the 5 days of the week. Where elementary, you're selecting either Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Friday. You'll be assigned unless you need a preference for one of those two cohorts. So unfortunately, we can't coordinate that. I'm sorry.
Will the first day of school still be September 2nd?
First day is September 3rd, but not for all students. It depends on the cohort the students are in, and those cohort calendars will be posted.
Can doors and windows be left open? What is the ventilation system in our district like? MERV ratings, HEPA.
MERV ratings and HEPA. Windows can be left open. Of course, we don't leave them open if it's too hot out or too cold out, but yeah, they can be left open for some fresh air and ventilation. Ventilation in our district, especially in the high school with the last bond, a lot of the systems are updated. And we're currently using MERV 11 filters at the high school wherever applicable. And there's no HEPA filters, but HEPA filters haven't been proven to prevent the spread of COVID. They only trap 3 micron pieces, and the COVID virus is 1 micron.
Do you have any info for a new student?
Yeah, for new student, if you haven't registered yet, please go over to 20 School Street and make sure that you register. Mr. O'Hara, anything to add?
Just if you have registered, you will be receiving our welcome letter directing you to packets that are going to be available on the internet. And if you have not registered yet, when you register, we will hand you hard copies of all of the welcome information.
There are a number of questions on types of masks. So has there been any decision on masks, types, and colors? Are there any specific requirements for masks, like certain colors are not allowed? Will there be criteria for proper masks so students are not just wearing a bandana?
Yes.
We want the students to follow the code of conduct as far as colors and or any graphics that might be on the masks. So obviously we don't want to violate the code of conduct. Also, yeah, gaiters are permissible. We prefer that they be of a material that's actually going to stop an aerosolization of their saliva. We don't want something that's just nylon where their breath is coming right through it. That defeats the purpose of the face mask, or any other type of. You can wear a surgical mask. You can buy custom fitted masks, such as my own. You know, but yeah, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire as far as the type of mask. It has to be a face covering that complies with the CDC regulations, which is easily found on the internet.
And then continuing on that, so can they wear gator masks?
Again, the gaiters, as long as they're made of a material other than like a nylon that permits the aerosolization to come through, we prefer the gaiter to be of a substantial cloth makeup.
How accessible are teachers for children when they are doing remote learning?
So the remote platform is the Google Classroom. So assignments, videos that are posted, live recordings of lessons that are posted, some feedback will take place through that format. Any students who have questions or are stuck, they certainly can send an email, and teachers will respond in the normal fashion that we do under normal circumstances.
Given that there are staff and students that may have been on vacation in states that require quarantine for 14 days, will the district be notified of those community members who should not be in the building at the beginning of September?
Again, if they are tested and the Suffolk County Department of Health is notified by a credible testing lab or their physicians, they are automatically going to call the district, and we will cooperate with them in providing all the information necessary for contact tracing. And then we'll make notifications through our normal notification procedures, whether it robocalls, email, school messenger, to make sure that everybody is notified that needs to be notified of any possible quarantines and or health risks.
There's another question about changing for gym, which we know they're not changing for gym, but the question then is, should kids wear sneakers and comfortable clothes on gym days?
Yes, Mr. Sachs will work with the physical education staff to inform students of how they should prepare for days that they do have gym. And keeping in mind that each cohort does have an A day and a B day, you will have gym on one of your in-person days.
Will students with driver's licenses be allowed to drive themselves to BOCES on the days their cohort is not in school?
I cannot speak for either of those facilities. We are providing transportation. So the procedure in the past has been that students should drive to Riverhead High School if they are eligible to drive, and we will provide busing and transportation to and from the facility.
Will the students with asthma or other breathing problems be allowed more frequent mask breaks?
If a student brings in a doctor's notification, the building administration will and the school nurse will review and, if necessary, provide those frequent mask breaks. Yes.
What's the earliest I can drop my son off at school? Last year, I would drop him off at about 6:45.
That's fine. That'll work just fine. We prefer later, closer to the start of school day, the first class. But if that's the best you can do, we can work with that.
Is the district still looking into music performances during the school day to give students the ability to showcase their talents?
This is something that we're going to explore as
Yeah, Mr. Rockham,
our year proceeds.
I'll take it. Ms. Stevenson, if you can mute Mr. Rockham.
Sure.
Very profound time for the arts moving forward.
Wow, we muted him and now we can hear him. Sorry, Mr. Rockham, we muted you. We couldn't hear your video, your audio. So we're going to do our best that we can provide some mechanism during the school day where the students can perform, probably not in front of an audience, but if we could do a recording and share that with families so that they can hear the student progress, we'll do everything we can. And hopefully moving forward, there'll be some limitations lifted that will allow us to be able to do more performances. So it's early in the school year at this point. We're hoping that circumstances change.
Okay. How will seniors and parents of seniors access guidance counselors to discuss the college app process? Will this be virtually?
Yeah, it'll be a blend of in-person and virtual. We will certainly be available to meet with students live in face-to-face situations when they're here with, providing they're following their cohort. We are not going to be cutting back on any of the post-secondary planning services we do, whether those are in computer labs or in classrooms or in small group. We will probably be staying away from the small group in their offices, but we will be doing it in classrooms and in computer labs. So none of our students will be suffering. If anything, they're going to get a more intimate experience with less students, but certainly with their counselor. And of course, we're going to be available for anyone who has a question, whether it be through email or phone calls. We will handle those as well. But everything that the students have gotten in years past, they will continue to get this year. We are not going to let this situation take anything away from them.
Thank you.
How will temperature checks be done for students enrolled in the Suffolk Community College program that do not arrive until fourth period?
Everybody entering any of our school facilities and our administrative offices will be temperature checked, whether they are here at first start of the day or throughout the day. If they leave for lunch, when they return, they have to be checked again. So every time someone enters the building, they will be temperature checked.
May I add something to that as well?
Yes.
The Suffolk Community College Early College Program is going to be virtual for at least the fall semester. So that means that the students will be working with their professors at Suffolk, which will be live streaming during their regular instructional periods or instructional class times. The students that are here in the high school as their cohorts are in those days, will be placed into a computer lab where they will have a nice quiet place to work and get that instruction. And the days that they're not here, they will be able to do it from home. So we're not going to have an issue at this point of students coming back and forth from Suffolk because the campus is closed for not only ECP, but for all of their students.
Will high school hours remain 7:18 to 2 o'clock?
First period begins at 7:15 a.m. So just said yes. So yes, they will remain 7:15 a.m. to 2 o'clock p.m.
Are parking permits being distributed for the Class D drivers? And if so, how do we get one?
Yes, so the welcome letter that's going to be coming home will direct you to where you can find the application for the parking pass, and parking passes will be given to those who have senior licenses.
When will senior portraits come in the mail, and how will it work?
We're still working out the details with the photographer, logistic-wise, where we're going to have the portraits taken in the school when we begin. I'm actually working very closely with the yearbook coordinator and the senior advisors. As far as when they'll come in the mail, it depends on how quickly we can get all the portraits taken.
Will the windows be open on buses?
The answer is yes. We're encouraging it as long as it's weather dependent. Please open the windows. Let the ventilation come in.
Is there any threshold criteria to close the school full-time?
We take our guidance from the governor, and he's been informing us that he's looking at it by region. So basically Long Island is a region. So if we're told by the governor that Long Island schools are closed, then we have to follow his directive. When it comes to specific COVID cases in the building or in the district, as Mr. Culhane said, we'll be working with the Department of Health and following their direction as to how they think we should proceed.
How is the temperature taken? What type of device will be used?
A handheld thermometer, contactless. Mr. Jacobellis is holding it up. And there'll be another device also that we're testing at other locations that is also contactless. But for the most part, it's those handheld contactless devices.
Can you please explain the plan for the students attending BOCES will look like, primarily the BSD students?
Mr. Schneider, you want to take that?
Okay, so for BSD students, those students should be receiving communication from the transportation department and from BOCES as to what exactly the times are for their placements. BSD, obviously basic skills development students who have IEPs, special education needs. I think that the general answer is that the information is going to come from the transportation department, and it's going to look largely similar to what was there last year. For students who don't have an IEP, who are just in the plain OCED program, as we said a few minutes ago, they're going to be in all of the OCED programs are only going to run in the morning this year. All the students will be able to be accommodated in the morning programs only.
Will the teachers and staff be tested for COVID prior to starting the school year?
We're not requiring any type of testing for teachers and students prior to coming. You know, we trust that all of our community members and staff and faculty are responsible people and will do the right thing if they feel that there's a chance that they may be compromised and not compromise the rest of the school community.
And that's the end of our questions.
So thank you everyone for participating today. As we mentioned earlier, this will be recorded so people that were not able to watch this presentation can let them know that it will be up on the website hopefully by the end of today. It's quite busy here, so it's hard for us to break away from meetings to get through other things. But we're looking forward to the new school year. We're looking forward to having students and staff back in the buildings, and we're looking forward to full instruction at some point. Again, we don't have all the answers to everything. We just ask for your patience and your understanding as we navigate this challenge, and it's a challenge for everyone, and we understand the level of anxiety that exists among families, among students, among staff, amongst all of us on this call. We're all working around the clock to do the best we can to bring our students and staff back as safely as possible. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists today. I would especially like to thank Ms. Stevenson, who has been moderating all of our workshops for us, and we appreciate her efforts. Mr. O'Hara, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just Ms. Nona, thank you for providing this opportunity for our families, and thank you to the panelists, and Ms. Stevenson, of course, thank you so much. And, you know, I just want to remind everybody that there's going to be some challenges. And so patience, flexibility, and communication is going to be key. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us at the high school with any questions that you may have. And if your question wasn't answered during this format, please do not hesitate to reach out. And I cannot wait to see everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.